Hello and welcome into Big Talk, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I'm Dalton Shetler on the other side of your screen, and the other part of the audio, that's Sam Sprunger that you'll be hearing throughout the show.
Hello.
There it is. So now you're identified. You got this for the rest of the way.
Hello there.
It's it could have went with the friends Joey.
I'm not very good.
Really?
I've watched Friends, but I've watched more Friends that it's on syndication on TBS now than whenever it was on.
We started with a dead fish thrown in the lap. Okay, so let's get this show up and moving.
What's this, Mr. Pop Culture? Jeez.
Look at me. Hey, maybe I got a little more than I'm showing off.
Is it Hey-O or something I don't know.
Now I can't even remember.
How you doing?
How you doing? That's it. There you go. Thank you.
You even screwed it up.
I know.
Look at you trying to, make me feel bad, and then I figured it out.
Oh, no. I feel bad that I just threw a dead fish in the middle of the show to start things off. Okay, so we're here to talk Big Ten football. We might even get to a little bit of Big Ten basketball. Media Day is coming up next week, Sam. So basketball is really itching around the corner. And for, you and I, look, for our new listeners, Sam has a big interest in Purdue athletics. I have a pretty big interest in Michigan State athletics.
It's going to be an exciting year for us.
Whatever you want to put it as, MSU number 1, Purdue 2, or Purdue 1, MSU 2, like those are
Purdue number 1.
I expected as much from you, but those two teams really both look strong, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally, and it's gonna be a fun race to see what kind of happens there with the Big Ten this upcoming season. We might get to some basketball later on, but we are in the heat of football season. In this past week, I want to say we tried to learn something. I'm not sure that we did. And if you want to start with a couple of the head scratchers, where I just don't know what to make of a couple of these teams, the matchup between Illinois and Purdue, the Boilermakers absolutely dropped the hammer down on the Illini. The final score 44-19. And we had been watching Purdue drop to Fresno State, drop to Syracuse. And I thought maybe we're seeing a team towards the end of the bottom of the Big Ten West. And then they go out and they beat Illinois by 25 points. Well, we talked about this last week. I said it's a flip 'em game, right? Like it seemed that close to me.
And I agreed.
Yeah. And for them to win by 4 scores, I still don't really know what to do with this game.
Well, I honestly have not had any issue with the Purdue offense. Now, don't get me wrong, they haven't fired on all cylinders at all times, but they've still put points on the board. It was the defense that couldn't keep the points off the board. And I don't know if it's a combination of Illinois losing their DC and some key defensive players, and Purdue trying to figure out their defense because they got Illinois' DC. I don't know if it was a combination that led to Purdue stopping them more and Illinois not having a defense to, the same defense from last year. I don't know if it's that or if Purdue's starting to figure a little bit out, or maybe it's close enough to the same defense that they're both trying to figure stuff out, and Purdue just came out more successful because they have, at this point, a better offense. I don't know. I still don't have those questions answered. I can't hear you.
Test 1, 2. Can you hear me now?
Go. You can hear you now. I don't know what you did, but
we might have a sensitive cable. We'll keep an eye on that.
Well.
Just let me know. But anyways,
sure you call it pretty.
But I think there's quite a few of these Big Ten football teams that we're still not really sure of. Like, it's not just Illinois and Purdue, even though they certainly are part of it. Nebraska, I think at this point we can be sure it's in a total rebuild mode for Matt Rule in year 1 there. As Michigan, we also know from that matchup, Michigan's pretty good. They handled the Huskers 45-7.
As much. We did. We haven't once said that they're not any good. We just said that their first test isn't coming until mid-November.
Correct. But I just, if we're looking for teams that we kind of have an idea, you could check those 2 boxes for Nebraska, Michigan. We don't really know what's going on with Illinois, Purdue.
I'm going to say Purdue's getting better. That's just me.
Fair enough. Michigan State, Iowa. This was a game played at Kinnick Stadium. It was a blackout in Iowa City. For the first half, we were actually just talking about this before we hit the show start. And we were talking about, I mean, for Michigan State, they came out the gates hot. There wasn't a single incompletion through the entire first quarter. Noah Kim found Malik Carr his first 6 pass attempts. Malik Carr had 6 receptions.
Wow, that's a good game for a receiver.
It was. And then Malik ended up getting hurt towards the end of that first quarter and didn't come back in that game. So his day was done there, but it was a career high for Malik Carr after just one quarter for what he was able to do in Iowa City. But after that, the offense really started to kind of bottom out. The defense had a hard time in the second half, kind of getting off the field. So many penalties, 7 second half penalties against Michigan State. And it goes back to, I mean, acting head coach Harlan Barnett says discipline is what's kind of in the way of this team right now. You saw it on full display between the turnovers and penalties in that second half. But Michigan State's defense did show up. Cal Holiday had a scoop and score, a defensive touchdown. He had a 42-yard fumble return to put the Spartans on the board in terms of touchdowns, because in terms of field goals, there's a new record here, Sam. I don't know if you caught this, but Jonathan Kim hit a 58-yard field goal at Kinnick Stadium. That's a new stadium record. So the Spartan can hang his hat on that. How about that?
Seriously, of all the kickers that Iowa's had, they've never kicked more than a 58-yard field goal?
It's the best that's ever been done there. 58 yards, and that one probably could have been good for him a little bit more. But let's get to the winners in this one. Iowa, that kind of persevered. Caden McNamara left in this game. Obviously, he's been hurt, tore his ACL. He's done for the season. But Deacon Hill, who looks like a linebacker, came into the game in reserve and was able to propel Iowa forward and get the win. And then, of course, it was capped off with Cooper DeJean's 70-yard punt return for a touchdown. I mean, the guy is just special. He had an interception in the first quarter as a punt return to win the game for Iowa. Just a special, special player there in Iowa City. But that game was a bit of a roller coaster ride for both teams, but Iowa prevails.
Does this put a big wrench in the 25 points per game? Throw a wrench into it. The McNamara
26. Oh, the McNamara. Yeah. No, I think it absolutely does. Well, and of course, you know, fans still are having some fun with things where another AI video of Brian Ferentz was created where he's fake doing a press conference saying we need to waive the drive to 325 or whatever because all the injuries that have happened. Excellent stuff as always.
He's not going to be able to give a press conference period and have it be thought that it's real.
Yeah, I know. I'm that way on social media at this point. Any video I see, like I
doubt it.
I always was cautious, but now like I have to triple check everything. I'm like, did he really say that? Did Jimmy Butler really go to the Miami Heat media day as an emo kid, like where he had the hair like that? That was real.
I thought it was photoshopped. I really did.
That was real. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything's going to be triple checked. But yeah, and certainly with the Iowa stuff going on there with the AI that takes place there. But Iowa at this point, Sam, the Big Ten West is hard to figure out as we continue to talk about teams and programs that we still have questions for. I think the whole Big Ten West might qualify for the most part, but Iowa might win that division still.
Do you think they have enough offense to do that though?
To beat what?
Oh, well, mind you, the crossover games count as conference games, or that division.
Well, let's take a look at that schedule. Yeah.
And so, like, do they have enough offense to be able to, let's say, beat Wisconsin? And now, granted, Wisconsin's got to go do that too. Wisconsin's got to limit their losses in the crossover games, whoever they cross over against, and then also within the division. But does Iowa have enough to beat those crossovers? I'm sure it's not. I mean, they sure didn't with McNamara against Penn State. And
correct.
So, like, I don't know that they could win it, but will they? That's the question. Well,
let's take a look at the rest of this Iowa schedule then, and it starts with this weekend. we can kind of tie in, I guess, our game preview as we kind of move forward, but we're still taking a look at some of these teams. Right. Iowa hosts Purdue this weekend. Purdue is one of those teams we were just talking about. I still don't really know what to make of them, so
this
I don't really know how to feel.
6-3 game, honestly.
It could be.
I know I said it last week, or last week, or what it was. Yeah, against Michigan State, it could be. This could be another one of those that Purdue's struggle is their defense.
Yep.
So, but their Iowa's strength is their defense. So, could it be a 6-3 game? I don't know.
A stoppable force against a movable object. That's a matchup coming up this weekend. After that, the following weekend is when we're going to get maybe a little bit more clarity on this. Iowa goes to Madison, Wisconsin, October 14th to take on the Badgers. But get a load of this, Sam. After that, Iowa hosts Minnesota. Minnesota, we've kind of agree, is struggling. Then Iowa goes to Northwestern. That's a winnable game for the Hawkeyes. Then the final crossover game, because mind you, they've played Penn State and Michigan State already. They only got one more East game left, and it's hosting Rutgers.
Oh, so they got the Purdue schedule from last year.
Kinda
to where they didn't have to play the big ones.
So, well, minus Penn State. I mean that. Well,
I'm saying the traditional big ones. The two big ones that are sitting at the top always.
But host Rutgers. That's the final crossover game for them. Then they host Illinois, and then they finish the season going to Nebraska. Like, that's possible they only drop one of those games the rest of the way.
No, they're gonna pull the same thing they did last year and lose to Nebraska.
But like, I hope I'm being clear. That's not necessarily an appraisal of Iowa being so good they're blowing the doors off of everybody. I mean, the evidence is there. They're solid. They're great defensively. They're great special teams wise. Offense, a huge question mark. And with injuries, makes you doubt it even more. But I doubt the rest of the Big Ten West so much, where I almost think Iowa can do that. Now, and Wisconsin, I'm still not sure what they are. And they lost one of their big players in Ches Malusi for the rest of the year.
Right. And I don't have their schedule at the trip of my finger here either. They have to play Rutgers this week.
Then I got it here. So they play Rutgers and then the Iowa matchup, as we talked about. Then they head to Illinois. Then they host Ohio State.
Okay.
And then they're at Indiana, host Northwestern, host Nebraska, at Minnesota.
They avoid Michigan.
Yes.
And Penn State.
Yes. But they I mean, honestly, maybe it just comes down to next weekend when Iowa and Wisconsin actually play each other, because Iowa took the loss to Penn State. You imagine playing out this hypothetical Ohio State's going to handle business against Wisconsin. It might really come down to that, and then just see if one of those teams trips somewhere else along the way. But like it's really fascinating when you take a look at those. But one of those teams is more than likely, because I can't name another Big Ten West team that I believe could contend for the division title right now than those two.
You're leaving one team out. Just saying.
The Purdue Boilermakers?
Yes. They still have only lost one conference game. Just saying.
And who was that? Because that was actually in my mind
Wisconsin,
the other day.
Last Friday.
Wisconsin, that's right. So 38-17, they dropped to. This is what I mean. What am I supposed to do with Purdue? What They lost by 3 touchdowns, and then they respond by winning against Illinois by 4 scores. The margin between Wisconsin and Illinois should not be 7 scores with Purdue in the middle. Like, I don't understand how to do the math here on Big Ten West football.
Well, it's just I don't know.
You don't either.
I can't even pretend. I can't even pretend to know that.
I mean, it's so unbelievable when you look at the Big Ten West. But let's go back to this past weekend, because a Big Ten West team almost threw a monkey in the wrench. Northwestern tied at halftime with Penn State. 10-all.
It took a late score touchdown for Penn State to have it tied.
Yeah,
because I was skimming scores, because Saturday is a busy day. I've got JV football usually, maybe something else, and I had multiple things going on. So while I'm doing all that, I'm checking scores, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, ESPN has to have this screwed up because it was 10-3 Northwestern. I'm like, no way. And then I'm like, no, that's real. But then, Penn State got it going after
Which,
that.
by the way, I was able to watch that end of first half, beginning second half in the midst of everything else I was doing for that day. I do believe, I don't know if anybody paid enough attention to the game or has actually written about this, but David Braun, the interim coach for Northwestern, deserves some praise because there were many situations, fourth down, whatever. He's like, we're going for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he understood, like, look, we are David going against Goliath in this matchup. And what do we got to lose? Like, he played so fearless. And I feel like some coaches don't do that in those situations. But David had the situational awareness. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, let's leave it out there. Let's go. And honestly, it gave them some chances. They just didn't convert in some crucial plays.
Yeah, and nothing else to lose.
Yeah.
Why not? Let's let it all hang out, and you know what? Maybe some things happen, and stranger things have happened, and maybe they hang around long enough to where all of a sudden Penn State's kind of wigging out a little bit, and all of a sudden they, make a better game out of it. But as the second half just didn't pan out well for them. So it's. I'm trying to look. There it is. Penn State fumbled the ball. They turned the ball over for the first time this year.
Yeah,
that's something no other team other than Northwestern could do to Penn State. So there are some. You hate to say moral victories, but there are some wins in there that you can hang your hat on and say, "Look, we did this."
Yeah.
Let's build on that for next week. I'm not saying Northwestern's all of a sudden going to go and win out. But I'm just saying that you can start hanging your hat on some of these things and start improving every week to where Northwestern might win 3-4 games. They might shock some teams. They're not going to beat, I don't know what their schedule is, but they're not going to beat a Michigan or an Ohio State, but they might beat an Illinois, that you're not expecting them to do, or a Michigan State if they play. You just don't know because now they're starting to see some success in some things that they weren't. They were down 21 points going into the fourth quarter against Minnesota, and they won.
Right.
So there's some things that are brewing with that Northwestern team. And here's another thing. I'm trying to say this. They don't reload every year. They're not reloaders. They rebuild, and they play successfully every couple of years or so. And I think the athletes that they have some athletes in there, so they're going to perform well as long as they've got the motivation. And they got kicked in the gut at the beginning of the year, but they're still prideful kids and want to play. They don't want to just roll over. So I think they could have some good things happening soon.
And they play Howard this weekend. They've already played 2 of their crossover games. The only one they have left is Maryland. So honestly, there could be a couple wins still on the board for Northwestern. I'm kind of excited for that. But let's go ahead now, Sam, and move towards this weekend slate. And let's start with.
I forgot to mention real quick, Maryland thumped IU.
Well, I want to talk about Maryland. So let's save them for their matchup this weekend.
Fair enough.
But tonight, Big Ten football gets started for the weekend slate. Nebraska heads to Illinois. It is a 8:00 kick. We do know that there was a fire at Memorial Stadium in Champaign, Illinois. The fire apparently didn't damage too much, and everything's okay to go with the stadium today. So we do have a game going between Nebraska and Illinois. Hopefully the fire isn't a sign of things to come between these two teams that have been a bit rocky.
I was just going to say, if Illinois loses, then we have even more questions.
Yeah. And I think I saw the report was a vehicle caught on fire, like underneath Memorial Stadium. That's what caused it. Anyway, but Nebraska, Illinois.
Underneath? Like in the tunnels?
I think so.
How the heck does that happen?
I really don't know. But Brett Bielema's response was, as Brett Bielema, as you can expect, he's like, Yeah, my wife called me. I was sitting in my office, and she's like, "Hey, there's a fire reported at an address near you." And I looked out, and I was like, "I don't see smoke." He said his chief of staff came down and evacuated the building. And goes, "Oh, yeah, I guess there is smoke."
It's
So,
underneath us.
Perfect football coach. Everything.
Oblivious to everything but football.
You're right. But Nebraska, Illinois tonight, I really don't know what to make of this one because Illinois just took it on the chin against Purdue, as we talked about. Nebraska took it on the chin against Michigan. I think both teams are kind of wobbling a bit, and I don't know what's going to happen here.
I don't know.
Well, do you want the lamest analysis I can offer on this?
Please, because it'll be better than anything I've got.
Honestly, I'll give the edge to Illinois, A, because they're at home, but B, because they're in year 3 of the Brett Bielema era. So everybody knows a little bit of what to expect, what he needs moving forward this week to be able to flip things around, more so than what Matt Rule's just been able to establish in just half of year 1 in Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, it's fairly lame analysis. Feel free to call it out, but that's the best solution I can offer or rationalization I can offer heading into this one.
Yeah, I honestly, that would be, like I said, that's better than anything that I could give because these two teams, we expected more from each of them, and it's just not panning out to this point. So, yeah, I would say, and for Nebraska fans, ease up. I mean, you were excited about Matt Rule. You should still be. He's gonna. I mean, he can't just add players in the middle of the season. That's not the way it works.
And you're not wrong, but boy, are you talking to the most scarred fan base in Big Ten that exists in the last couple of decades right now.
So if I say the word frost, that gets them worked up into a lather.
I mean, everything. Like this was a program that ruled the world in the 90s. Like they ran everything. And now like they just lose one possession games every week in some unthinkable way. Like I understand why they're so calloused and hardened right now, so Nebraska fans. But I do believe, like you, in Matt Rule. I do think there is something to build there with Nebraska. I think Matt Rule can get it done, but yeah, I totally.
He's proven it everywhere he's gone at the college level. That's why I would not worry yet.
I totally get though why your words of advice falls on deaf ears though right now, because everybody's like, I don't want to hear it. Like I just let me sit there on Friday tonight and think about anything else of how this game could possibly hurt me. On Saturday, tomorrow, there's 5 games involving a Big Ten team. One non-conference game, that's Northwestern Howard. We talked about that. But I want to start with
see it for $5 if you want.
It's not a bad deal. That's cheaper than fast food lunch.
Yeah.
But Maryland at number 4, Ohio State. We can talk about the matchup specifically here in a minute, but I want to go back to your point. Maryland destroyed Indiana, 44-17 to final there. But I want to talk about Maryland here for a minute, because here the Terps sit 5-0. It's their best start since 2001.
First time ever in the Big Ten
that they've been
5-0.
2-0. 2-0 in conference play.
Yeah.
But I mean, to your point, like the Terps, they look pretty good. And do you want to play the old-timey sports radio, sports media game of contender or pretender?
For the East, they're pretending. They're not going to contend in the East. I would say that contending for the CFP, they're pretending. They're going to lose some games. They've still got 3 matchups that we haven't seen that are happening because they're in division, and that's Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. Mm-hmm. I think it's safe to say that they're definitely going to lose 2 or 3 of those, if not all 3 of them.
Yep.
So, but they're contending in the aspect of they're not the average, Maryland team that we've seen. I would say they're going to get a better bowl game than what they're used to, because they're a better team. They just got stuck into a division that really is not fortunate for. If we're next year playing next year's rules this year with no division, they might be 4th overall in the
Yeah.
conference, which
Well,
could. I said could.
Well, I just with it, those Pac-12 teams coming in.
I know, but depending on what their schedule looks like, they may miss some of those, and they may be. I know what you mean, but at the same time, they could with what they've got.
I just saw Washington and Michael Penix just a couple weeks ago, and I'm
right.
still scarred by
you
that
got to
one.
remember, I do believe Penix is in his last year, so he won't be around next year. Correct?
I feel like we've said that for 4 years, but yes, you are correct. But
so Washington's not going to be at the same level unless they've got somebody in the cupboard that we just don't know about, because Penix is just Heisman level right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that they would be 4th best. I'm just saying they could be contending for 4th best. And in this year's Big Ten, without those extra 4, but them playing in next year, what I was saying is if it was set up like it is going to be next year, but with this year's Big Ten, they'd be the 4th best team by far.
Oh, that's what the way my brain was kind of formulating it is if Maryland, for whatever reason, was in the Big Ten West this year.
Oh, they'd be running away with it.
I was going to say, I don't even think like we're having discussions. I think we're just putting Maryland, Indianapolis, and let's see who are the other beasts they get to play. Like Maryland, and what's funny about this too is like Maryland for the last handful of years, maybe just a couple, they've had great Septembers. They've had great starts to a season, and then it fizzled out when they got into Big Ten play. I'm with you. I don't necessarily see that they beat Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, or
they might
maybe
pull one of those off,
maybe one,
but I'm not seeing more than one, and
Yeah.
more than likely I'm gonna say they're gonna lose all 3 of those.
Yeah, and I'm with you, but this is the most competent Maryland team I think I've ever seen, and a lot of it is Talia Tagovailoa. I mean, he just passed the 9,000 yard mark for his career. I mean, it's ridiculous.
60 some yards last week.
It's ridiculous. His receiver, Ty Felton, had 3 touchdowns in the first half against the Hoosiers. In the first half. Like, this Maryland team is pretty dang good. I'm with you. I think they're going to get a better bowl game. I think they are much more advanced than years past. Yeah. And remember, last year they were still solid, but Raheem Jarrett is gone to the NFL, and also Raheem Jarrett, I believe, had injuries throughout last year, and so many of their different players had injuries. But the defense is starting to force turnovers as well. Like this Maryland team as a whole is playing a lot better. I'm with you. I don't think they win the Big Ten, but I do think they're worth talking about and certainly worth watching. I think it's a fun team. Now, my question is, when Tagovailoa leaves, can Mike Locksley keep this going in College Park? That seems to be the huge question that sits in front of them moving forward past this year. But for right now, let's just enjoy the turtle ride.
Not think about the future, Dalton. What are you doing? Come on, play in the now.
5-0. So we can get into that game in just a moment. But I did see that you just threw in the chat. You got something you want to unveil here.
Yeah, so it's that time of year. We've talked about it. The leaves start falling and turning colors and falling, and the weather gets a little cool at night and in the early morning, and football's underway in the throes of the middle of the seasons, both high school, college, professional, and then also that wonderful time of the year that Jim Harbaugh rumors spike.
There's a few of them. What one do you got? Because you got a grin going here.
So I read something the other day, and I read it, and I'm like, this is just silly. And then the more I thought about it is, what has Michigan done the last 2 years that they haven't done in the Jim Harbaugh era?
Is this rhetorical, or are you asking me?
No, I'm asking you.
Okay.
I want an actual back and forth here, Dalton. Come on.
I thought it was going to be rhetorical. My bad. But I to me, if I had to answer, it's about winning the trenches. Michigan football the last 2 years has dominated the line of scrimmage like they hadn't any other time in the Harbaugh era.
Okay. And what did that produce then?
The running game.
And I mean, in the grand scheme of things,
Big Ten championships,
CFP appearances, right? Maybe underperforming at times, but still making it to the CFP. No championships. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you get into this year, they're number 2 in the country. They're running what seems to be on all cylinders. They haven't been tested yet. That'll come in a few weeks. But let's say They make it to the Big Ten championship. They win the Big Ten championship because we all can say that we pretty much feel that whoever comes out of the East is going to win the Big Ten. That's not a 100% given, but we're at like 99.98%.
Given history, that would be 100% given. Like
correct. If you go back on history, it's gonna be a long time until you find a West champion for the Big Ten champion. But so they make the CFP. Now, is there a point that there are three outcomes that you could say will happen from that CFP appearance for Michigan? They're going to either bow out early, they're going to win and lose in the national championship game, or they're going to win the whole thing. So those are
my nightmare.
But let's say that those are your only three outcomes that you can see coming from that outcome. Now, the fourth outcome prior to the Big Ten championship is they don't make the Big Ten championship game and they don't even make the CFP. So there are four possibilities. And I think we would all lean towards, even if they don't make it to the Big Ten championship, they could possibly, depending on how they don't make it to the Big Ten championship, if they beat Ohio State, that would be 3 straight Ohio State wins. Okay. So Jim Harbaugh is riding on a high, right? Is it going to get better after this year? I mean, honestly, could get better, but there are going to be people leaving, going to, bigger and better things, NFL, transfer, whatever. So I'm thinking this is about as good as it gets. For Jim Harbaugh.
No, I know what we're doing.
There is a team right now playing in the NFL.
I knew it.
With the horribleness that they've played, that at this time, if you projected the season ended now, would have the first and second pick in the NFL draft. And that is the Chicago Bears. If listeners / viewers don't know, that's where Jim Harbaugh started his NFL career and probably had his most productive years, minus one in Indianapolis, where they got to the AFC Championship game, where he made his name as a quarterback. And he's 60 years old, which is the same age that Mike Ditka was when he came in to the Bears and had to rebuild them. So I could see, and I don't think it's completely, now I don't think that the Bears will have the first and second pick. I think that it's going to wash out to maybe they have the second and fifth or whatever, but they're going to have 2 top 6 or 7 picks probably in the NFL draft. That gives him some draft stock to where he could rebuild with some pieces. Now he could do, the thing where I want to be in on the draft room to see where we're going and have input, maybe not make the choices, but at least have input to where he builds his team. And they're going to have a ton of cap space. They're going to be able to sign some draft or some free agents that could make the Bears a lot better and in Jim Harbaugh's image and what he wants, to where he wants to be in the NFL. We wouldn't have these rumors every single stinking year if
I was going to say
want to go back to the NFL.
It's really football season now. Like we were missing something, and it was a Harbaugh to the NFL rumor machine starting up again.
But with the Bears' poor performance, I don't think there's any way Matt Eberflus makes it through this season.
Oh, agreed.
And I saw a thing on the platform formerly known as Twitter that said it had every single major sports organization or league on it: soccer, hockey, football, basketball. It said all the teams that had won since Elon Musk bought Twitter. It was every single one except for the Chicago Bears. They have not won a game since October of last year.
So I looked it up too because I was curious how close we are to the year anniversary. It was October 24th, the last time that they won a football.
So they're
game.
going to have to win in the next couple of weeks. And and I made the horrible mistake of texting a couple of buddies saying, well, it's looking good this week because the Bears were up 21 points to the Broncos. I said, it's looking pretty good this week, but this is sad. And then they ended up losing. They're at an all-time. I've been a Bears fan for my entire life, and I've seen some pretty bad Bears teams. Now, I've seen some really good ones too, but I've seen some pretty bad Bears teams, and this takes the cake. It just, and Matt Eberflus may be great at a coordinator's position, but he's certainly just not. Maybe he picked the wrong organization to tie his head coaching career start to. Maybe, but at the same time, maybe he's not head coaching material. This organization fired Lovie Smith after a 10-6 season to John Fox, who did horribly.
I was going to say, if you go through the list of coaches and
Matt
quarterbacks
Nagy,
that the Bears have had, is
Matt Nagy wasn't horrid, but he wasn't good. And now you have Matt Eberflus, who's just been the worst of all four of them.
So let me poke at it from this angle, because we have another rational now Harbaugh thought to the NFL, which we've had the last 3 seasons. Like, none of them have ever really been that crazy. They've all made sense. This one certainly makes sense. But let's poke at it from this angle. You're a Bears fan, as you just admitted. Do you want Jim Harbaugh?
With the current state of the Bears, I think anything could be better. And if you get somebody that has this is my team mentality or hit the door type thing, which I think look at what Harbaugh has done at the professional level. That's what it's not even that I don't like him as a coach or whatever, or I hate the fact that he holds Michigan kind of hostage every year about this. But look at what he did with San Francisco. They were 3-13 when he came in, and within 3 years he was in the NFC Championship, and he took them to a Super Bowl. He put Colin Kaepernick in there, who was kind of an unproven at the time, and was able to. I mean, Alex Smith wasn't dog food,
right?
And they ended up. I mean, look at what he did with Washington and with Kansas City in those. So he wasn't garbage, but he redid the offense to where Kaepernick was a better fit. I'm not saying Justin Fields is the next coming of Lamar Jackson or whatever, but he's not.
It's more to that style.
Style. And so I think he could take a Justin Fields unless they get the number 1 pick to where they could take Caleb Williams if he chose to come out. Or the number 2 pick to where he could get one of the two top quarterbacks in the draft. It fits. So honestly, if it meant dealing with Walmart khakis every week, I could do it, I think.
Yeah, that's it is interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun to see kind of how that plays out too, because I mean, it's been something I guess Michigan's been accustomed to dealing with throughout the seasons, because it's been so many consecutive years now where this has been hanging over their heads.
I've been doing podcasting of sports or of some sort every, for the last 4 years, and it's been every single year.
Yeah.
That there have been Harbaugh things, rumors, popping up. Is he leaving?
Well, and I tell you what too, because it will be interesting to watch how that all plays out. But I'm also curious too in the here and now with Michigan.
Shoot, the Bears could hire Ryan Day if Michigan beats Ohio State this year,
and they get rid of Ryan Day. But for Michigan, I mean, this is a team that looks like it's headed to maybe win that East Division, and you've seen it maybe a couple issues with the rushing attack. It hasn't been quite as great as expected, which doesn't mean it's been bad. It's just, right. I mean, you got Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum back there. And of course they're sharing reps, but they go to Minnesota tomorrow. I believe that's an afternoon kick. No, excuse me. That's a night kick.
7:30 on kick. Peacock.
And it is Minnesota at home. Oh, I should mention that's on NBC and Peacock, that game.
Oh, yes, it's both. I'm sorry. I didn't look at the NBC part yet.
But Minnesota hosts Michigan. I think the Wolverines take this one, Sam.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be the drubbing that they gave Nebraska, but I think they're going to beat them pretty handily. I mean, Michigan is really a good team, and we know that.
Yes.
Like I've said earlier, they're a really good team, and we know that. But it's a matter of when they get tested, what are they going to be able to do? When they're not able to put 40 points on the board, are they going to be able to hold the other team? Somebody like Penn State on Veterans Day. Penn State's got an offense, a really, really good offense. So, I mean, we just talked about it. They've only turned the ball over once this year to this point. That's not nothing, I mean, I think they run away in a smaller extent against Minnesota, because I think Minnesota is the better team between them and Nebraska.
And they kind of proved it on the field when they won with a game-winning field goal. I mean, it was a sloppy game, but Minnesota did win it. Right. A couple other games that we did not mention yet. We both liked Ohio State to beat Maryland. That's a noon kick tomorrow. Rutgers goes to Madison, Wisconsin. That's also a noon kick. That's a Peacock game. And Wisconsin right now is favored by 13 points. I'm interested in what Rutgers can do here, because Rutgers is kind of hanging around with some folks, and they just beat Wagner 52-3 last week.
Well, and the question, they always seem to hang around at least for the first half. It's whether or not that can disrupt Wisconsin enough to keep them around longer. And if they keep them around longer, can Rutgers do something to pull off an upset?
Like
this would be an upset in my mind. This would absolutely be an upset. I mean,
agreed.
It's not that Rutgers is complete garbage, but they're not at the level of
Wisconsin.
I can't say this, Iowa. But my point being is they could put together a game of every team does it. They put together the perfect 4 quarters, and end up winning a game that they shouldn't. Is this the one Rutgers does?
And Rutgers is sort of made of that mold, right? Like the Graciano grit and everything else, where they kind of hang around. That matchup's got my ears perked a little bit. I'm interested to see what happens there in that one. And then finally, Purdue, Iowa. We mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's going to be at Kinnick Stadium. It's another Peacock game. Iowa hosting Purdue, and this is the closest the spreads get for the Big Ten this week. Iowa's favored just by 2 points.
So it's a pick'em game because it's at Iowa.
Pretty much. The over-under set at 38, which classic.
Way too many points, unless Purdue scores 35.
Yeah. But this is pretty interesting to me, because can Iowa keep it going without Cade McNamara? Can Deacon Hill keep whatever there is of the Iowa offense going for the Hawkeyes to prevail, or did Purdue find something out last week?
Oh, I think IDWA has an advantage. They do. It's you caught that. Good.
I caught the IDWA.
They've got the advantage because they're at home. That's to me, going to Kinnick is a tough thing to do. And if you remember the last time Purdue went there, they housed Iowa. And I don't think if there's anything, I think Iowa's got a revengeful memory. That what did you do to us the last time? We're gonna try to do our best to do the same to you. And if you remember last year's game at Purdue, it was in the middle of a rainstorm, but Iowa won by 3 touchdowns. And so now, granted, different coaching staff for Purdue, but at the same time, some of those or a lot of those players are the same ones. Are they going to have that in mind? So I'm going to say Purdue wins. Yeah.
Okay.
Purdue wins by a field goal.
Feeling it.
6-3.
Hey, real quick too. Yeah. So I know we're getting to the end, and next week, besides Big Ten football, we'll talk a little bit about Big Ten basketball, because the men's side, we have the full schedules now with tip times, all sorts of things. Women's basketball, we actually have the all conference preseason teams listed and the rankings as well. So we can get to all that next week, because we're running out of time here. But in releasing the schedules, the TV times, and the TV networks, we discovered that Peacock is going to get a few of these games. They're going to get.
There are a lot of people that aren't happy with it either.
I was going to say this might be setting up for Sam rant to close us out, but
except for I have Peacock.
Oh, okay. Well,
I want to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Office, and some of these great, Parks and Rec, all those without any, and you can't watch it on the free version of Peacock.
right.
And I got a deal, and now I pay $6 a month for no commercials. So like I don't even have to watch ads. So I pay for Peacock, but it has nothing to do for the sports package. It's a nice benefit to have, though.
Well, and fair enough, but let's go through the prism. If Sam did not have Peacock,
Oh, I'd be pissed.
He finds
because
out
there's a Purdue IU game on Peacock.
That's exactly it. There's a Purdue Indiana game. There's a Michigan State Michigan game that is in the middle of the week, a 9:00 tip on Peacock. Like, there are some big games that are being pushed over to Peacock. And like, it's one thing, I think, for people, if it's the smaller games, non-conference games, whatever it is, but for Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan to be on there, the two best rivalries, I think we could say easily in the Big Ten, like that's got people up in arms.
Now, I know there is a code for a special rate for Peacock, and I believe it is Big Ten Fan.
Okay.
You enter that in, you get it for $60 for the year, which is $5 a month. That's not horrid. Now, I'm not telling you to specifically go and get it for that. There is The Office, there is Parks and Rec, there's Brooklyn Nine-Nine, plus there's a plethora, yes, I said plethora, of other great content that you can watch on Peacock with that, and all you get the sports package with it too. So it's an alternative to I mean, you're paying for Netflix and whatever streaming service that you're not getting anything sports wise. So why not pay for the Peacock one, get that great content, and then, oh, hey, as a nice off derivative, you get the sports package as well.
Well, and that's fair. I think there's probably actually a lot to this conversation too. Maybe we end up tackling some of this next week as well. But maybe one of my biggest complaints isn't so much that the games have been pushed to Peacock, but at this point early on, the production value of Peacock for sports broadcasts, I feel like have been less than some of the other TV networks. And that's where I find a bone to pick, where if I have to spend money additionally just for this slew of games, besides if I'm looking for The Office and all those other types of programs,
right?
To have to pay something extra that I wasn't necessarily planning on or expecting to, and for the product to not be as good, and it's not because of the competition on the floor, but just the broadcast overall. That's where I think I start to really find a bit of a bone to pick as well, and I think some others do too.
Well, when it comes to sports, as long as they've got the game and they're not looking at the fans while something big is happening, I really don't care about the production. Honestly, I know that sounds silly, but honestly, I'm wanting to watch the game. I get it. If I've got the game and there's some hack announcing it, I can hit mute. I can find, the game call on my Sirius XM app and listen to the game call while I'm watching. There are apps that will even line those up to where you can say, I'm watching it on, I don't know if it's you can do it through Peacock, but I'm sure you can, finagle it around to where all of a sudden they're matched up and you're watching the game with your own call. So that part, as long as they're showing the game, that part doesn't bother me as much. As long as they're, like I said, they're not looking at a receiver while the ball's being run. They'd have to be pretty horrible. I mean, you're talking to a guy that if they just had a big widescreen shot of the whole field and I could barely make out who was who, but I could still see the game happening, I wouldn't be that upset with it.
And you know what? Maybe the majority is with you. Maybe like that represents the average fan more. I'm not really sure where it lies, but that's possible. Like we said, there's a lot to this Peacock conversation. We can continue it one of the future shows, and we'll definitely get to some Big Ten basketball next week because
March
Media Day is
2nd,
coming up.
my friend. March 2nd
for Indiana, Purdue.
No, Michigan State at Purdue.
Oh, I thought. Sorry, my brain was still on Peacock mode. I was trying to figure out what.
No, just talking about something that we both have interest in, and
yeah, that's the only meeting that those two teams will have this year
in the regular season.
Correct. But like, I mean, sometimes they play some opponents twice.
Right.
Michigan State, Purdue, that's it. And it's at Mackey Arena, which of course is a house of horrors for everybody.
And it's on Fox.
Purdue.
But
on
yeah. Fox at 8 p.m.
So we'll be getting into some Big Ten basketball here in the next couple of weeks, men's and women's, on top of everything else.
Call that a Purdue W. Yeah. Because that's what Michigan State does when they go to Mackey. They don't get the W.
I want you to have to sit with that one for a minute. That's what I was laying up for. All right, let's close up shop. Let's get into the weekend for Big Ten football. Sam, where can everybody find us?
All right, on the TikToks, the Instagram, and the platform formerly known as Twitter, we are at B1G_talk. That's B1G, not B-I-G, Dalton, B1G_talk. Go to Facebook. Yes, just remember, we're number one. Think of that, and you know how to spell big in there. So then B1G Talk for Facebook, and not all Big Talk. It's just Big Talk. And we stream every week on the ASAP network on Fridays. We may expand during the basketball season, but right now we're seeing it being feasible that we just do the once a week right now. A lot of things happening that we've got to be able to take care of production wise and whatnot. And the talent only wants to do one a week. But then we're streamed live on ASAP network every week. And then later the podcast version comes out through Lounge Media Group. If you have to watch us, and today I have the Schoolhouse Rock, I'm Just a Bill. Yeah.
Very nice.
But encouraging you to vote. Doesn't matter how you vote, as long as you take into consideration what you're voting for. Vote. That's our civic duty. So that's me as a social studies teacher there, Dalton.
Okay, very nice.
So every vote counts. Even
you know what it made me think of.
What's that?
What it made me think of was The Office, going back to that conversation when Michael met somebody named Bill. He's like, "Oh, Mr. Bill." I love that show. But
if you want to see the video, go to Spotify. You can watch the video cast of of the show if you missed it on ASAP, or you can find the audio version, podcast version, anywhere you find your podcasts.
All right. Well, and a big thank you to all of you for tuning in and joining us for another edition of Big Talk. Like we said, next week we got a lot to get to, so we look forward to talking to you all then. But in the meantime, I'm Dalton Shetler. That's Sam Sprunger. So long. Enjoy the weekend.
See ya.